welcome everybody. Thanks for coming to another episode of Fireside with Soli. Educational series. Look, after a successful presentation last week, I hope you guys enjoyed it. And with a relatively warm response from you guys, from what I could see, we've decided to continue to add value, or further value, I should say, to Fireside this week with a presentation orientated around none other than direct smart contract interaction. I asked for some feedback from you guys last week around subject matter and topics you want us to discuss, and this seemed to be, one of the winning arguments or requests. So, let's crack on. Firstly, let's define what a smart contract is. For some of you, this may be abundantly obvious and apparent. I'm going to sort of approach this in terms of catering to a very green person, a very new person who's not too familiar with DeFi or smart contracts yet. So some of this information you may already know, some of it you might not. So just bear with me. It does get very detailed and involved, trust me. So look, a smart contract is exactly what it sounds like. It's a contract that is essentially programmed to facilitate the transaction and transfer of assets, money, property, or anything of value in a transparent way without requiring the escrow services of a middleman. Think of it as an autonomous escrow service, I suppose, with strict parameters set, and all of which must be met for the transaction to be verified and validated on the blockchain. To protect users of the smart contract, if any of these hard-coded parameters are not met during the execution of the transaction, then the transaction is reverted and all states are reverted back to where they previously were before the transaction took place. So this system works on the if-then premise, meaning all respective parameters of the contract must be met in order for the transaction to be deemed successful. So an example of this being, let's say Alice decides to buy Phantom using USDC at a spot price predetermined by the liquidity pool at the time. Alice executes the swap and has slippage set at 1%. So this is a variable parameter, and this specifies in the router contract that if the price increases by 1%, then at the time that Alice executes the transaction, then the router contract will allow for the slippage of prices to be a variable that's allowed for within the transaction, and will proceed to execute the swap anyway, even though Alice is actually paying up to a 1% premium from her initial trade agreement. The same if-then premise would say apply if, let's say, Alice sets slippage to 1%. But the price increases by more than 1% before Alice executes her transaction, stating that if the price increases by 2%, then the transaction will revert as the parameters of the agreement within the smart contract have varied outside the specified fields, meaning that all states are reverted to where they were before the transaction took place, i.e. Alice has the same amount of funds that she had before the transaction, same with the liquidity pool that she was interacting with. Let's take a look at some of the benefits of using a smart contract. So, I would highlight there are 5 main benefits behind using smart contracts over the traditional format. First being autonomy. If you, you are making a hard-coded agreement with a counterparty, so there's no need to rely on a middleman to act as an escrow between both counterparties. The second being savings. By removing the need for a middleman, you save money. The only costs incurred that of gas and protocol fees, which are negligible when you consider the cost of escrowship or in the traditional sense, such as solicitors, bank transfer fees, etc. Trust is the third. Smart contracts are trustless, with predetermined outcomes and specifications to which these are verified already and hard-coded within the smart contract, which is stored in an open source ledger of events, the blockchain. This circumvents any sort of human error that can occur in a traditional transaction. The fourth being backup. Transactions, documents, wallets, access to assets are all backed up and globally distributed many times over, thus making them retrievable from any node on the network at any time. And the fifth being speed. Processing documents and paperwork associated with traditional transactions or contracts in the traditional sense, can take a vast amount of time and thus money. A smart contract will, use code to automate tasks to ensure that each respective criteria of the contract is met before the transaction is verified. This saves hours of traditional processes associated with traditional contract and transaction approval. So let's look at some of the use cases behind smart contracts. The beauty of smart contracts is that they virtually have unlimited application potential. Smart contracts can be used to facilitate the transfer of ownership pertaining but not limited to property, assets, real estate, etc. They can be used to verify proof of ownership or even proof of access. For example, using an NFT to interact with a smart contract that would verify that NFT provides proof of ownership or proof of access to a house, office space, or vehicle, etc. I watched a video last week of some guy unlocking his house door using zero proof knowledge through an NFT that he had ownership over. Right now in the DeFi space, we're kind of pioneering the use of smart contracts to facilitate the transfer of ownership relating to assets or options specifically. But, as blockchain research and development expands, smart contracts can be used for other real-world use cases, such as, let's say verification of authentication, so for logistics and freight, or even tracking the origins of products and goods. So how do smart contracts apply to DeFi? Look, it's an easy way to facilitate the transfer of assets in a decentralized manner, hence decentralized finance. In DeFi specifically, we utilize smart contracts to facilitate the transfer of assets or property, depending on how the transaction is classed, I suppose, to complete, a transaction in return for an agreed counter response that's outlined and predetermined as per the smart contract that you're interacting with. So at a very basic level, an example of swapping tokens is one example. You interact with a router contract to swap X amount of token A for X amount of token B, with the exception of slippage as a variable. The contract states that, all specifications of the contract must be true in order to verify and authenticate the transaction on the blockchain. DeFi protocols, they have complex mechanics and require some heavy computation for some processes. Smart contracts essentially automate and alleviate this workload, making such transactions far cheaper, quicker, and more efficient. Another example might be, for example, depositing LP tokens into a yield vault. This form of a contract would, stipulate a spend limit of X at a deposit rate of Y in order to return Z, which in this case would stipulate a receipt token to that vault verifying your ownership of the interest accruing assets within that vault. The proof of ownership by Z tokens enables the user to then later withdraw their assets, which have compounded in value as per the functions coded into that smart contract, being the auto vault. It's these sort of strict sets of parameters that protect the user. If you know how to read a smart contract, there should be no surprises or, fine print, I suppose, in the traditional sense. So why is it important to know how to interact with smart contracts directly? I mean, look, at a high level, understand exactly what you're interacting with, especially if it comes to your own personal finance or management of the custody of your assets. It's always a recommendation. Let's say, for example, a protocol's been hacked and the attacker has taken down the UI and is proceeding to remove funds from the liquidity pool or vault. Without the UI in place, there's no means for you to make Web3 calls to that contract that holds your funds, in order for you to then regain custody over said funds and protect them from the would-be attacker. By understanding how to interact with the functions of that smart contract directly, you're empowered to take control in a situation like this by being able to actually interact with the smart contract directly without UI. Basic smart contract interaction. So look, in this educational series, we'll have to break down into several parts, unfortunately, over the coming weeks across multiple firesides. once I actually crack on with the nitty gritty, you'll see why it can get pretty complex. I also hope that in doing this as well, once you guys sort of see how complex some of the computations are, even for extremely basic things like swapping and making LPs, how many variables that need to be set and dealt with, you'll start to see how much work actually goes in on the background, while we're actually coding these parameters and establishing Web3 calls to connect point A with point B. It might give the when question askers out there about V2 some kind of insight as to why production can take so long sometimes, and how many things need to be tested and made sure that everything's working correctly. So yeah, look, without any further ado, in this series we're going to cover how to swap using the router contract directly. We're going to cover how to make a liquidity pool using the router contract directly, how to break or withdraw an LP using the router contract directly, how to deposit liquidity pool assets into a gauge or farm using the gauge proxy contract, which is a separate contract, how to withdraw from the gauge proxy contract, and most importantly, the emergency withdrawal function. For the sake of this presentation, I'll keep it SpiritSwap related. However, if you're keen to explore the interactions and functionalities of other smart contracts relating to other protocols, it's a simple case of just identifying the smart contract that you're interacting with at the time, querying the specific functions that you want further clarification around with the developer directly. This is always advisable, as understanding the nature of the smart contracts that you're dealing with can be what ultimately gives you the edge in a live or die situation during a crisis. But anyway, enough waffling from me. Let's crack on with things. So in this presentation, we'll focus directly on how to actually how to swap using the router contract directly. So that's the main process of today's presentation. So interacting with the router contract directly empowers you to facilitate things like swaps, making or breaking liquidity pools without the need of basic UI. But it does get complicated, so let's take note. To facilitate the swap, we first need to find the router contract, find the liquidity pool contract, and find the contracts of your assets that you wish to interact with. In this case, Wrapped Phantom and Spirit. We'll be using Spirit and Wrapped Phantom liquidity pool as an example. Most of which can be found in protocol documents. If you can't find them, just ask a developer for access for more information, or even go through your old transactions. If you know how to read Phantom Scanner, you can find any previous transactions that you've done in the past. And obviously identify liquidity pools that way. If you look on our Git book, most of the pertinent contracts that we'll be using today can be located under the contract section there. For this particular presentation, swapping is done via the router contract, so that's the second contract that you can see under the contract section of our Git book. So first off, we need to understand that there's a little bit of groundwork or prep work that needs to be done before we can actually start to execute command line interface, of Phantom Scanner when interacting directly with the smart contract. So as I mentioned already, we need to find all pertinent contracts to swap for the swap that we need access to. So this is the router contract, the liquidity pool contract. So in this case, the liquidity pool contract for Wrapped Phantom and Spirit. The contracts of the individual tokens that we wish to swap, being Wrapped Phantom and Spirit. And we also need some conversion tools as well. ETH converter for converting big numbers to small numbers and vice versa. You'll see what I mean further on in the presentation. And also a epoch time converter, which is for finding contract deadline parameters, which is a variable that needs to be input into the smart contract before you write it. So first we need to actually query the reserves in the liquidity pool, and this is a fairly basic process. This allows you to identify exactly how much liquidity is sitting within the pool you intend to interact with. So we're doing this based on the premise that there's no UI available, so you can't go and just have a look at a price chart at the time. We're basically, the purpose of this exercise is, expect that there's no UI available. So we go to the liquidity pool contract and select the read function. So you'll note that that there's two functions available. There's a read and a write function. Reading is for querying specific information within that smart contract, and writing is for specifically interacting with that smart contract from your wallet. So once we're in the liquidity pool contract, you then go to function number 8, which is get reserves, and select query. You click the query function there, and what will happen is this will give you the result of two numbers. And these two numbers are large numbers, or big numbers we refer to, representing the amount of tokens for token A and token B. So the 4495 number we see here is the amount of tokens or amount of phantom that's available in this specific liquidity pool. The big number gives you the amount of each token to the 18th, representing the 18 decimals of that token. This is what we use the epoch time converter, the ETH converter for later on in the process. The second is the 7787, so this is representing how many Spirit tokens are available in the liquidity pool at that time. So, bit of detailed information and math here. Again, after this presentation, I actually have a document that gives you a step-by-step, really basic, like I literally spoon feed you, run through all of this information. So if you're trying to take notes and missing any of this, don't worry about it. I'll be posting a document in the Fireside channel shortly. So using the ETH converter tool, we convert these into what we call small numbers. So what we do is we go to ethconverter.com, input the big numbers in the way field that you see up the top here, and then we convert these and use the output field in ETH. So for example, that large 7787442 blah 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 number is spat out as 77,874,421 Spirit. So it basically breaks it down into a small human readable number for you. So what we then do is we take asset 1 and divide it by asset 2 using the small numbers. So we convert both of these into small numbers, and in doing this, what this does is, so for example, 77 million Spirit divided by 4.4 million Phantom, we get 17.32, larger string of numbers there. And this represents the amount of, or the price of Spirit to Phantom. So what we're figuring out here is a 1-for-1 ratio. What's one Phantom worth in terms of one Spirit? So now what we need to do is actually apply slippage to this. So for 17.32, we multiply by, for example, 0.95, which would apply a 5% slippage to the trade that we're going to execute. So 17.32 multiplied by 0.95 at 5% slippage gives us 16.45 Spirit. So what we're saying here is we're happy to receive a minimum of 16.45 Spirit per Phantom that we spend. So like I said, this gives you the 1-for-1 ratio. However, if you intend to spend more Phantom in your swap, so if you're going to be swapping more than one Phantom, you need to multiply the number of Phantom you wish to spend with slippage adjusted by the amount of Spirit at a 1-for-1 ratio. So for example, if we're going to be spending 6 Phantom at a slippage of 5% multiplied by 0.95 equals 5.7 Phantom, and multiply that by the 16.45 figure, which is slippage applied of the Spirit, which gives us 93.79 Spirit. So what this number is it's saying we're happy to receive, for the 6 Phantom we're about to spend, we're happy to receive a minimum of 93.79 Spirit. And these are variable parameters that we're setting within the smart contract. If you remember before, I was going through the if-then premise, and it's basically saying, if it's going to cost me more, or if I'm not going to get this minimum amount of Spirit in the trade, then the trade will revert because it falls outside of those pre-specified parameters. So what we then do is we take this 93.79 figure and convert this back into a big number using ETH converter, and it gives us this number here. Gives us this number here, which is, 93796162, blah, 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 blah. Basically, we just note this number down and remember this for later. A basic rule of thumb is anything suggesting integer 256 requires a big number to be put in that field when interacting with the smart contract on the blockchain. So next, what we need to do is we need to actually approve spend for both assets, and in terms of Spirit and Wrapped Phantom, as these are the two assets that we're going to be interacting with here. You may have already done this using UI in the past, and so if you do have unlimited spends already set for these assets within the router contract, you don't have to worry about this. But again, I'm basing this presentation around the fact that no UI is available, or you haven't interacted with these assets in the past. So what we need to do is we need to go to each respective contract and find field number 2. So this would be the Spirit token contract and the Wrapped Phantom token contract. Again, we're going to write contract here because we're going to be interacting directly with this contract. First off, you need to connect your wallet. As you'll see up here, you can connect your wallet directly to the smart contract on Phantom Scan. We input the sender address as our address, so you can see I've used the test wallet here in this case. And the unit value, so again, this is a U integer, 256, so we need to use a big number here. So again, we just use ethconverter.com. For the sake of this demonstration, I'm going to be spending 6 Phantom. So I take that 6, put it into the into the Ether field, and then that will convert into a way number, which is 6 to the 18th decimal. Do this for both tokens. Once this is done, you then click write, execute the transaction in MetaMask, and you can push on to the next step. The next step is we need to actually find the transaction deadline. So this is the last bit of groundwork that we need to do here. This is a parameter that we need to set in the router contract that, again, works on the if-then premise. So it specifies if the transaction does not validate by a specific time, then the transaction will revert and all funds will be restored to their previous states. If we don't set this parameter within the contract, essentially it could mean that the transaction is pending for eternity. So there has to be a deadline set. I wouldn't worry too much about why we need to do this for now. This will make sense further on in the presentation, but for now, let's just work out the figure. So by going to Epoch Converter, we simply change the date in the edit field to a day from now. So if we set it to a day from now, we're basically buying ourselves time. If you set it to a couple of minutes, it may take you longer than that to actually complete the follow-up steps that are required to execute this trade directly using the smart contract. And as a result, if you fall outside of that time frame, the transaction will fail, obviously because there is a variable parameter that hasn't been met in the execution of that interaction with the smart contract. So we change the date and edit it to a day from now as an example. We click human readable date or human date to timestamp, copy the epoch timestamp and save this from later. So for the purpose of this presentation, I actually made the date revert to 10 days from now, just to buy time. You can do it by a day, you can do it by a couple of days, it's up to you. So we copy this number here, and this is the last bit of information that we need to actually execute the trade. So, are you still with me? There's been a bit of information, to take on that I've sort of shoveled down your throats. I'm sure your head is spinning at this point. So let's do a quick recap. So far, we've queried the balance of the liquidity pool to identify the price of the asset that we want to swap. We've converted the assets available in the liquidity pool from big numbers to small numbers to make them easier to work with. We've divided asset class A, which is Phantom, by asset class B, which is Spirit, to get the price of Spirit to Phantom as it sits within the liquidity pool. We've applied 5% slippage to both numbers by multiplying by the small number by 0.95. We've converted these back to big numbers for the sake of smart contract interaction. We've approved spend limits for each token by interacting with their contract address directly, and we've figured out the transaction deadline by converting human readable date to epoch timestamp. Now we can jump back into the router contract, and this is where we will actually process the transaction with all of this, previously gathered information on hand. We scroll down to function number 10, as depicted in the left screenshot here. this is the function swap exact ETH for tokens. So note, if we're swapping tokens back to Phantom, so for example, if we're swapping Spirit to Phantom, which we're not in this case, we would use function 12, which is swap exact tokens for ETH. Or if we were to do a token for token transfer, for example, if we're swapping Liquid Driver for Spirit or vice versa, we would use the function number 14, which is swap exact tokens for tokens. It's important to use the right function. If we don't, then the transaction will not work. If you're unsure, just ask a developer. However, I mean, if you're going through and reading the titles of these functions, it should just be a case of common sense, I suppose. Let's push on. So router contract, swap exact ETH for tokens, filling in the fields. This is the nitty gritty, and this is where all of the prep work that we've just done, kind of falls into place. So first off, parameter number 1, swap exact ETH for tokens is the total amount of Phantom that you want to swap. So remember to adjust for slippage. 6 multiplied by 0.95 gives us 5.7. So by putting 5.7 in this field, we're allowing for slippage. Note, this is not a U integer section, so we are okay to actually use a small number here. In the output section, we copy paste over that big number that we previously worked out in slide number 10. To reiterate, this is taking the total number of Phantom that we want to swap with slippage applied and multiplying this by the total amount of Spirit per Phantom with slippage applied, and then converted into a big number using the conversion tool. So in this case, 5.7 Phantom times 16.45 Spirit equals 93.79, then converting this to a big number. So this is the amount of Spirit that we're specifying in the contract that we're happy to receive as a minimum for this trade. However, if the trade is looking like it's going to vary or deviate from that parameter, then the trade will fail. And this parameter is what is protecting you from not being screwed by a bad deal, I suppose. Path is the token address, or both token addresses. So wrap Phantom using a comma to break them, and then token B, which is Spirit, and then encased in brackets. This basically tells the contract that this is the path you want the trade to route through. So, generally when you look in the UI, when you're executing a trade, at the bottom it'll tell you, what routes or what hops the trade is actually making in order to facilitate the trade. So note that if there is no liquidity for the pair that you want to trade, then the transaction will actually fail, as it will likely fall outside of your slippage parameters. This is a case of the if-then premise of the smart contract design actually protecting you from getting wrecked. So in this example, you can see that I've pasted the contract address for wrap Phantom, the contract address for Spirit with a comma breaking them, and then obviously encased in brackets. So this is the string of text that you see down here. The to address is your address. That's a no-brainer. Bit of a fun fact, but not a funny one. This is the function that the DNS hacker actually took advantage of by changing the Web3 calls to the router contract to his address. So as people were interacting with the router contract, the Web3 calls were basically changing the to address to his address and not yours. Last being the deadline, so this is the epoch timestamp that we figured out before, and this basically specifies that this is the deadline for the contract to execute, just like a standard contract with a bank or anything else. There's always deadlines to contracts, so we specified this in this section here. With all of the aforementioned, parameters in place, all that's left to do is to click Write Contract. So remember to connect your MetaMask with the router contract, just like you did when approving the spend transactions for the 2 tokens that we're interacting with there. So you need to connect your MetaMask to the smart contract on Phantom Scan directly and approve in MetaMask. And hey, presto, you've just done your first swap via direct smart contract interaction. You can then check the transaction status by clicking on View Your Transaction, and that will take you through to something that I'm very sure all of you are familiar with, a scan transaction on the blockchain, showing you exactly how the transaction executed. And so this is a run through basically how the hops will happen. So this concludes our presentation on direct smart contract interaction today. Look, I hope that you've found this all extremely helpful. I've chewed up a bit of time today, and if anyone has any questions, I think we can fit one or two in before we all have to get back to work. Like I said earlier, I've also taken the liberty of compiling and condensing these steps into a PDF document, which I'll post shortly in the Fireside channel. So if any of you guys, want to follow these steps for yourself and give it a spin, then feel free to do so. I find repetition is good when learning new things, so feel free to test it out a couple of times. Obviously just using a test wallet and with minimum funds, that way you can't go wrong. But yeah, looking forward to any further feedback. Thank you for your time, guys. I'm here to take any questions if anyone has any.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you so much for the presentation. I think we got one question, not related with presentation though.
Yeah, sure.
For the presentation, we got many thanks to you. So let me get the start with the first one. When version 2, as usual.
Oh man. Well, I think, as per the demonstration I just gave, you guys maybe have some insight as to how complex things can get from a back-end perspective. When V2. Not answering that question, man. Okay, put it this way. When V2 is coming, which is not far away, we have a plethora of marketing plans. So when you guys start to see teaser videos, when you guys start to see banner advertisements and things like that, we've got a big campaign planned out. That will be, trust me, it will be abundantly apparent. We plan to make it very apparent when V2 is, a week away from launching. So that's all I'm going to say for now.
All right. When forcing all in-spirit wrappers to sell to liquid driver.
Sorry, what was that again?
When forcing all in-spirit wrappers to sell to liquid driver.
Oh, here we go. What's this? When forcing all in-spirit wrappers to sell to liquid driver. Well, I mean, that would be a deal that the liquid would have to broker with the other WinSpirit protocols. Again, WinSpirit doesn't really have anything to do with us. As I've already said, V2 will definitely help accommodate WinSpirit pairs and assist with PEG, but ultimately, these WinSpirit pairs were spun up by these participating protocols. It's their product, so it's their responsibility to manage and take care of. When removing cap on Spirit emissions. So that's not going to happen, but I mean, well, you know what? I mean, it technically could. Again, just reminding people, we're a DAO. The team, we still do, but at the end of the month, all of the documentation from our legal team should be sorted for us to actually start handing ownership of, contracts and things like that to the multi-sig. What you guys need to remember is, it's part and parcel of being a DAO, and I mean, super cheap for you guys right now to be able to buy in and get a say over how things are done, but you only need 100,000 in Spirit to actually be able to make proposals for these kinds of things. At the end of the day, the original team, we don't want any centralized ownership over this. We initially set this up with the goal of achieving, true decentralized governance, true civil governance. He's just still sort of, racking his brain around how we can make this even more decentralized and how we can actually have a really fluid flow of communication between, the DAO members, people who are in-spirit holders who have a significant amount of say over how things are done, and how we can truly make this sort of autonomous. I don't think this has actually been done to its full capacity. I think DAO, the conventions and notions of DAOs are still sort of being explored. Look, it's our mission to try and sort of find the perfect balance, the perfect mix. So what I want to say is, again, just reiterate, you guys have say over this kind of stuff. If you have 100,000 in Spirit, you have voting rights over our snapshots. You guys can start making proposals and requests to the developer team that is responsible for maintaining SpiritSwap. And, our job's basically just to execute the will of the DAO. These are all discussions for you guys as DAO members to actually have amongst yourself and request from us. Looks like there's a couple more questions here. Okay, let's have a look. When NFT marketplace. So, we probably wouldn't go down that front. We're partnered with NFT Garage, Raul and his crew. They kind of, how do I put it? They have a minting as a service project, and we have a pretty good relationship with them. We obviously, it's through their site that you guys can actually go and mint the in-spirit NFTs. They're hosted on there. We probably wouldn't sort of, I guess as a SpiritSwap product, we probably wouldn't sort of go foraging in that area, so to speak. That's that market is I guess, predefined or sort of, operated on by the likes of PaintSwap and NFT Garage. It's not really a product that we're interested in voyaging into at the moment. We're more sort of orientated around decentralized finance, etc. We're an expansion on leverage to allow us to leverage farm on SpiritSwap. You can kind of already do that through Taro. But yeah, again, reverting back, if there are things that you guys want us to build out, this is our hope after V2 is complete. Right now, we're just kind of really focused on just getting this beast out into the marketplace. But if there are additional functionalities or options that you want added on to V2, you guys can make proposals for this. If you want us to extrapolate on something that Taro is already doing or another project and make it better, present your idea to the DAO. Again, I said this last week, but go back to our Commonwealth forum and have a look through the introduction post there. It takes you through the entire process as to how you can make a proposal, the template and format that we expect proposals to be made in. We want you guys to be involved with governance, so please don't shy away from that. When direct or responses through liquid drivers, shadow farms, shadow farms. Again, focus is on V2 at the moment. We're in chats with Doctor on further integration potentials. Look, Doc is a multi-sig of ours as well, so we're in close contact with him. But again, right now, main focus is just finishing up V2, which is not far away. X times Y equals K, obsolete tech. Yep, Uni V2 fork. That's it is kind of like the OG AMM. V2 extrapolates on this. That's all I'm going to say. What else? Great presentation. Thank you everyone for the feedback. I appreciate that. Were there any other questions anyone had? Ige, you got a question for me, man?
Not now. Somebody said, like they say, Homie is really loud to talk, like maybe we can invite him to the stage. I'm sure he will have many more questions.
Yeah, certainly. If he wants to jump up and have a chat, that's kind of what these things are for. So, Home, if you want to have a chat with me, man, that's why I'm here. Same with anybody else. I got a couple more minutes before I have to jump onto another meeting.
Yeah, Homie always has something to say.
We love you too, Homie.
Yeah, I just unmuted himself. Let me just get onto it.
Get my headset.
Homie, can you speak?
Hello. Can you hear me now?
Yep, I can, my friend. How are you?
Good.
Whereabouts are you calling from, caller?
I'm not going to dox myself.
An island. I appreciate that. I appreciate that, my man. How's things going? Did you enjoy the presentation?
But listen, man. First time I've seen a presentation this well. Last time I saw a presentation like that was on the Olympus Discord, and they presented it in such a way where they're more informative in their teaching. But so to begin with, I thought, okay, it's just another. But then you went deep. I was like, oh wow, shit, like this is some formative stuff. I started, getting. So I hope this is recorded because I started getting, like some notes and everything.
You don't trust me. You don't need to. Actually, you know what? I'll upload this document now just so everyone can see it. Give me one sec. So I went a step further for you guys.
Literally, it's amazing stuff. I mean, literally, you went above and beyond of what's required in all honesty, and this is something you don't need to do. But so the reason I was like, I don't want to say I was shit posting, like when like I know you guys are working. I'm part of the Liquid Driver team, so I'm getting everything behind the scenes and seeing that so many of the listeners here, Richie Boy, like Mr. Mart, for example, is Pickle Finance, but he's also with our Liquid Driver Discord as well as SpiritSwap, Bobby C, Do Fox. I'm trying to see who else. JJ, of course. So we got our Liquid Driver OGs.
We got a crypto play as well. By the way, he just left.
Was Clay in here? That's awesome. Yeah. So look, absolute pleasure to be presenting to all of you guys, and I'm open to all feedback as well. So
we absolutely love SpiritSwap. In all honesty, we love what you guys are doing. We love what you're building, and of course, we're rooting for you guys. Genuinely speaking, like of all the dexes that exist, for us as Liquid Driver holders, the success of SpiritSwap is the most paramount of them all.
Absolutely. So, we've got a great symbiotic relationship. That makes sense, for both to survive and strive and do well.
Nudge, force them all to sell to us.
Hey man, Adriano's he's a pretty compelling guy, man. He usually gets what he wants, so I'm sure if there's a will, there's a way. Liquid Driver are doing a great job of dominating the in-spirit supply at the moment. And again, it's kind of like settling for us to see a super capable team like Liquid Driver really dominating this, because as we move to on-chain governance, I've specified this before, it'll be in-spirit holders who hold a significant amount that will be able to take things a step further by submitting a PR on chain, a pull request on chain. You guys can go and design whatever you want, and submit this to the DAO, present it to the DAO, and if it gets voted in, then it automatically gets applied to the application, to SpiritSwap.
Go ahead, sir. Sorry.
No, I was just finishing up. Go ahead, my friend.
I was just saying that DAOs unfortunately live and die by user participation or DAO participants. So if there's something like voter apathy or not delegation but work capacity, like they're not encouraged to work, or they're not encouraged to participate or to provide any proposals or improvement proposals, then the DAO itself is non-functioning and would be useless in most cases. So it's fundamental to have. That's why Liquid Driver we're transitioning. So before we move to on-chain governance, we're transitioning from something what we're calling into a shadow DAO. So it's going to be a DAO which is more or less going to function similar to Concave's co-op. So I'm leaking now like more detailed information for everyone here.
That's some alpha. That's some alpha. Yeah.
No, it's not alpha. Most of the guys here are more or less going to be in the DAO, because as you can see them, they're passionate guys. They want to learn. They want to be here. So at the end of the day, so it's more like a centralized DAO, and then slowly we're going to transition that shadow DAO to a full-on DAO, where it's going to happen, and then slowly bring on-chain governance. So
perfect.
Building and incubating is fundamental, and that is the key to having a successful DAO is education.
Absolutely.
Because
could not agree more.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I see. We both share the same passion in terms of because I keep telling the guys as well. Anyone here that can replace me, I'd be forever grateful to them. Because I want to be replaceable.
Yeah, well, I mean, sorry.
Because I want to. Yeah, man. I want to sip my.
But that's the whole point, though, right?
I want to enjoy my life. I mean, if someone can do my job, and I hope 10 times better than me, please go ahead, take it. For the love of God, take it.
Someone, for the love of God, take it. Someone release him from his duty. Please, this man needs a life. But no, I get you. It's all a part of that autonomy, though, isn't it? You know, someone being able to pick up the rifle and run with it after the other soldier has fallen, so to speak. And that's an important aspect of developing a truly functional DAO, like you've pointed out. You know, if there's no participation in governance, then the DAO essentially fails. And so that's what we're trying to do with V2 is we are building metrics that incentivize participation in the DAO. We really want to get the average user more involved as well. I mean, obviously, you know, the likes of Liquid Driver and the other WindSpirit protocols are incentivized to participate in the DAO because it's advantageous to them in their own platforms. Look, some more than others, like Liquid Driver. You know, who are more sort of active in the space. But, you know, as a counterside to that, we do want the community being abundantly involved as well. And so I think it's, you know, it's a fine balance of building mechanics into your protocol that essentially not only allow for that to happen in an easier manner and catering to people by making it easy, but incentives are also good as well. You know, people like to make money one way or another, and I think if, you know, we can incentivize participation, DAO related aspects of the protocol, then, you know, that's a good way to get people more interested and more involved.
Yeah, money, of course, is one thing, but I'll give you a good example. So I'm also helping out with Temple DAO. And the pay there is astronomically high comparative to all the other DAOs, but at the end of the day, so first of all, market sentiment, and then sentiment towards the token itself is not the best. So sometimes people would rather work for a platform where it has a better reputation, better incubation, better all these, and less pay, so that they can hone their skills and then move to another one. Then settle for, let's say, the big paycheck, but in one that doesn't have the same pull or the glamour that others have. So it is a fine line. Even when you're, let's say, compensating and being one of the best compensators, you still might not get passionate individuals coming in, because especially when you're in the beginning stage, you need passion more so than you need let's say the dollars.
Yep. Absolutely. Sure. And I think, you know, all a part of building that passion, and you're absolutely right. You know, incentives are great for getting participation or I guess the initial sort of motivator for getting people involved, but you need to make sure that these people are actively engaged as well. You know, this is kind of like the double-edged sword of civil governance. You know, True. If people who are responsible for making decisions on behalf of the DAO are not educated properly or don't understand the implications behind some of the decisions that they're making, then equally the DAO can fail on that premise as well. You know, kind of like having an idiot run for office and get into office and you know, be responsible for making nationwide decisions and fiscal policies and things like that. You know, the system breaks.
I will not speak of Turnbull.
I'm picking up what you're putting down, but yeah, case in point that I'm making here is, you know, this is why we have these educational events and why we're going to get more and more involved with solely Fireside, and even like it doesn't even have to be me making these presentations. Look, if a community member wants to jump up and make a presentation themselves, feel free to do so. I don't see myself as a sitting in a higher position than anybody else in the DAO. This is the whole point, is that it's, it's meant to be decentralized. So, for example, if yourself or if anyone else here, wants to make a presentation to the DAO, wants to get more involved in these fireside chats, please just let us know and we can arrange it in advance. I think that would be really, really cool to actually start getting community members up here or DAO members up here and more involved in this process. Because the more we get to know one another a little bit better, the more we can sort of, understand each other's thought processes and where we sit in terms of, more mystical things like our ethics or methodologies and things like that. We're able to sort of develop a more cohesive mindset and steer the DAO collectively in the right direction. So yeah, Home, I just want to thank you so much for getting up here, man, and having a chat with us. Appreciate it.
This is the beauty of a bear market.
Exactly, we've got time.
Yeah, no, it's not just time, but you like the noise quiets down, and you get to meet SpiritSwap has been here for a year. I've been in this field for a year, and this is the first time that we got to interact directly in an open stage. Even though you're building and we're building, but we never connected. So this is the beauty of I think in a bear market where you can literally see who's building and who's passionate about their project, and having that connection, you inform them that we care about you, and we and vice versa, and we can build something even stronger in the future.
Absolutely, that's.
I was going to leak something, but I'll leave the tokenomics chat to another time, because I heard your nervous laughter. so I have an idea about about uncapping the tokenomics, and I'm going to present something to you. If you'll review it, I'll be very grateful for that.
Yeah, that sounds great. Absolutely.
It's something. It's something that I took inspiration from a guy who shall not be named, because now he's hated amongst the DeFi communities. But that's okay. I mean, look, it's all about taking what we deem as good ideas, even if they're from less liked community members or whatever, and making them better. It's all about iterating on things. You know what I mean? Taking what's good, taking what's broken, and making it better. Combining the two together. I would also recommend that, look, don't just present it to me, like part and parcel of the DAO, present it to the community. Go on to our... It's not like that. No, it's not like that. It's just... so it will, of course, it will be public. This is nothing to do with it being secretive or anything like that. It's just as a bounce idea from one person. Because if it let's say goes to community and they will see that, okay, he's proposing, let's say, uncapping it, that means he's opening up the printer, we're all going to go to zero, they're going to print to infinity, and we're all fucked. So excuse my French.
That's okay.
Like we've had this very early on during the liquid driver days, where people ask this question. They say that, okay, what's your max cap, or what's your token emission schedule looking like? And we try to explain that there's a difference between having control of your emissions and opposed to having a fixed schedule, because fixed schedule does not allow us to capture more emissions or to capture more TVL, and for us to adjust based on bull and bear markets. So having control of emissions gives us a greater let's say, flexibility for us to perform, and that's where I'm coming there, but articulating it and writing it in a fashion that is, let's say, deemed appropriate for SpiritSwap to be presented is why I wanted to share it with you, and nothing else apart from that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, you're wanting to run it up the flagpole first before presenting it. No, I get where you're coming from.
It will always be presented, because nothing is secret. Why am I saying it out loud? I could have DM'd you this message.
That's okay. That's fine. That's fine, man.
I think for me, we're in DeFi, and DeFi is supposed to be transparent, and that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I also think, it's funny that the topic of inflation, it's perceived by a lot of people as bad, but, while it's a double-edged sword, so long as inflation is controlled, it can also be a good thing as well. Like you said, enabling onboarding of greater TVL, onboarding of new users, etc. So, look, I'm really excited to take a peep at your idea, and we can iterate and extrapolate on that in DM. So feel free to slide on into my DM, sir. Thank you very much for your contribution.
Thank you, sir.
Nick,
yes,
guys,
again.
Don't wanna interrupt this lovely convo, but you are getting late to your meeting right now.
Yeah, okay, guys.
I am. Yes, thank you. The timekeeper. I appreciate that. You're a legend, man. I tend to dive down these rabbit holes too easily.
And I apologize, sir.
No, don't apologize. This is the kind of stuff that I want. This has turned into a dope conversation, and we have you to thank for it, Homer. So, again, thank you very much, sir, and I look forward to you contributing more to these discussions moving forward.
Thank you, sir.
Very good. Well, we'll wrap this up for today, guys. Thank you, everyone, for your time. This has been truly fantastic. It's great to see that the turnout to these events is growing. I can see way more people in here today than last week and even the week prior. Next week, I'm going to try and cover, I'll extrapolate further, on direct smart contract interactions. Next week, we'll be covering how to actually make a liquidity pool within the router contract, and then also how to break that liquidity pool or pull that liquidity out, converting them into single asset tokens again. So you guys will have that to look forward to. But until then, thank you very much for your time and have a great weekend, guys.